imagine what was
That was a
happening.
word. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Between Worlds event, exploring queer Asian Canadian identities. Thank you for joining us, those on the live stream. Hello from all your beautiful homes, and the live audience. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to just welcome everyone to the festival. If you have a chance, Iron Dog Books is our official bookseller in the tech gallery there, and they are selling all the books of the authors appearing at this event today. Authors on this panel will also have books for sale, and at the end, they will be at the tech gallery by the window. If you would like to approach them, buy some books, say hi, get your book signed, all that fun stuff. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that this festival takes place on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Also, Word Vancouver would like to take a moment to thank our generous donors and sponsors. We would like to give a special thank you to SFU and the Writer Studio for this wonderful space and their continued generous support of Word Vancouver. Also, other sponsors that we would like to thank, bear with me, it's a long, grateful list. The Canada Arts Council, the Canada Book Fund, the Canada Heritage Fund, Canada Periodical Fund, the BC Arts Council, BC Gaming, Creative BC, the City of Vancouver, DBVIA, the Joseph Wask Family Foundation, the Harbour Foundation, the BC and Yukon Book Prizes, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, CWILL, Pace and Associates, the Crime Writers Association, the Federation of BC Writers, the Surrey Library, and the Vancouver Public Library, the League of Canadian Poets, the Writers Union of Canada, the Vines Festival, and many more sponsors. Feel free to visit our list of sponsors on the wordvancouver.com website. And with that, I think we're going to start off with a poem from me, actually, because Leanne requested that I read a poem to get us all started into this queer Asian Canadian identity event. This poem's called Same Ocean from my book, Dream of Me as Water. Years after being asked, where are you from? I realized that I should have answered, did you know that when seawater meets freshwater in the ocean, a boundary forms between them? Though they appear to not be mixing, it does happen slowly and over time, two bodies, two places of belonging coming together. Despite efforts to keep us apart, to manifest an individual way of being, the parts that make up who we are, in a sense, are parts of the same ocean. There is no other way to think about this metaphor. Only a grandfather who rigged his boat with a tractor engine to give the family a better life, speeding across water with a few belongings, carrying an ocean's worth of culture that's filtered down generationally. When asked where I'm from, again, I'd say that a man once dreamed of more before turning his gaze towards the ocean, where two different bodies of water met and blended until he made landfall, attempting to walk forward, knowing that his existence was forever bound to two places. Our first wonderful panelist and reader here is Leanne Dunic. Leanne Dunic is a biracial, bisexual woman who has spent her life navigating liminal spaces, inspiring her to produce transmedia projects such as To Love the Coming End with Book Hug, Chin Music Press in 2017, and The Gift, also with Book Hug in 2019. Her most recent book is a lyric memoir with music entitled One and Half of You from Talonbooks. She is the fiction editor at Tahoma Literary Review and the leader of the band The Deep Cove. She lives on the unceded and occupied traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Leanne Dunic.
Thanks, David. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I want to read a page I wasn't planning on reading, but it feels like a good response to what you read. So I'll start with that. It refers to my brother, which in this book I call him Rat. So that's what I'm talking about, not a literal rat. Rat and I played where fresh water flowed into the Saanich Inlet, mixed salinity. Here, life evolved to endure movement between, fresh to salt, wet to dry, warm to cold, land to sea. Rippling in the ocean-bound creek, the largest snake we'd ever seen. It twisted in my grasp until its jaw took hold of my hand. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great, thank you. Okay. A girl in my kindergarten class remembers me as the girl who had a crush on the Ghostbusters. I loved them all, but especially Harold Ramis as Egon Spengler. Not only was he handsome, he was smart. He became my attraction prototype: glasses, intelligence, Adam's apple. Funny that the girl from my kindergarten class remembers my Ghostbuster crush more than me kissing her nearly every day. When I think of her, that's what I remember. At recess, the older kids taunted, "Are you a boy or a girl?" I was pretty sure I was a girl, but I didn't understand why I wanted to kiss boys and girls when I knew I wasn't supposed to. Gender didn't matter, age didn't either. I recall not just kissing my classmates, but the gray-haired school principal too. I loved to love. We were students at a Chinese school in a classroom mobile. After a year of Saturdays, we were pulled out. No more writing, right to left. Mother said, "We speak Cantonese, not Mandarin." And now I speak neither. Driving me to my girlfriend's house, my dad asked, "You're not gay, are you?" Maybe I had borrowed his clothes too often. Or maybe it was the short hair. Classmates called me Dyke. It didn't help that I went to the Melissa Etheridge concert where I bought a bandana covered in Venus symbols from the Your Little Secret tour. When someone commented on how lesbian it was, I didn't know what to do with the shame or the bandana. I dwell in the Chinatowns of port cities: Victoria, Vancouver, stints in Singapore, Kobe, Yokohama, San Francisco, Seattle. No answers, only red and gold plastic decorations and the question, "Is your mother Chinese?" They never ask if it's my father who is Chinese. Wei-Sun Choi's The Jade Peony, a Chinese-Canadian author, an invitation to community I didn't know I lacked, to possibilities. Wang Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. I become obsessed with vintage cheongsams, want to be wrecked by love.
Thank you so much, Leanne. I'm so glad you read those pieces. They're very beautiful. Um, So you're a musician as well, and I think this is a really fun thing to talk about because you kind of have feet in many worlds, in many creative worlds. So since you also write and perform, it's like when you're going through the book, it's nice to see that there are this hybrid forms of poetry and prose with musical qualities to them. I want to know, how does writing sort of kind of in between these forms, if you will, influence your approach to exploring a biracial and queer identity?
So how does writing in between forms inform my actual identity? My husband said that I am a multi-dimensional imposter syndrome believer. So like in regards to this panel, when I first got invited, I was like, am I even Asian enough? Am I even queer enough to be on this panel? And I had like some reservations about that. And then, this book is called Poetry, and I insisted it was nonfiction, but they insisted it was poetry. So I have these like questions. Am I enough? Blah, blah, blah. And I don't know the answer. I just started my PhD this year, and what I'm proposing it's about right now is something I'm calling Amphibious Poetics, and I'm saying that term to speak to that in-betweenness. For those who don't know, amphibians are creatures like salamanders or frogs, and they live both on land and in water. And I feel like my whole life has been living on land and in water and not quite belonging on the land and not quite belonging in the water. And so that's what I'm exploring with my PhD. And so I feel by the end of this, hopefully you'll be able to call me Dr. Dunic, and I will know more about myself and what I think about my artistic process and how it informs my actual work. But right now, my work seems to be just an exploration, a way of like, thinking things through and testing things out and playing and hopefully learning.
Well, I'm for one glad that you're on this panel and you said yes.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Jane Shi. Hi, Jane. Jane Shi is a queer Chinese settler living on the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. She's a poet, writer, editor, and organizer whose work appears in Disability Visibility blog, Briar Patch Magazine, The Puritan, CV2 Magazine, and is forthcoming in Queer Little Nightmares, an anthology of monstrous fiction and poetry. Out next month, among others. Leaving Chang'e Unread from Rahila's Ghost Press is her debut chapbook. Please welcome Jane.
Thank you, David. This first poem is called Walking into the Ocean. I frequently think about walking into the ocean. My sense of obligation to the earth is simply the flimsy contract of a collapsed toy ship factory. I wonder how long fish would live if no longer fugitive to keel, kellic, and angry boom chain. Injecting Botox into the water, the workers of our county must have looked forward to the coolness of soil when they drowned. The last of their incense breaths fleeing Pender Street, home between ashy pages of quiet nights and negligent morning. That portion of motherland was christened Oriental Hawaii. Which part did you name me after? I watch as you twist anchor lines with steaming red sausage, squeeze blood from wet towel. I get it all mixed up. The water from sausage oil, sunspots from badges of living. Tell me the difference between my bones and the bones of whale shark. Only this nuclear explosion paints brushstrokes like iron filings. My ghost grips my neck until I can breathe again. My fear is that the ocean knows too much, would reject me too. The pomelo at the corner of our fridge, untouched for months. Face torn up like sausage skin. Roof of my mouth softens, mistaken for glue. The ocean is a fable, seaweed stuck between front teeth. If we lay our hides side by side, which of us would have more scales? And after all of it, I ride Necton back to before I walk, to find my baby body fed, to find the coolness of soil and the shipyard's false summer heat. Safe, a warmth I have betrayed has betrayed me. Who can say if this daydream is more walking than water, more empty swing than the drop, more about daring to steal a pillow from a sleeping giant, unwound spool, a jar of kitchen grease, hunting frozen flies. Somehow, the tea is still cold, like you have forgotten who I am. What would you do if I could become a worm wedged between subduction zone boundary between us, waking up to everything gone? The ocean is not a feeling, not a child, not a mother, not a worker, not a word. She is quaking, spinning, ablaze, an oven of unfinished business, a forehead, still learning from contours of glass, just like we are. Maybe I'll read another one. This poem is called Searching for Dylan Joseph Vermeeren. On the three, I see eyes that could be yours. I smell a whiff of your laughter, the way your cousin crinkles his nose, welcomes the sunrise. If only I knew sign language, if only we could trace the signs, walk backwards. Slowly. Did you swim too fast? Was the water of life too full of plastic here? I'll remove them, each one, with my bare hands.
Thank you so much, Jane. Those are beautiful. I want to talk about this being your debut chapbook. I wanted you to kind of talk to if how you change as a writer or view yourself differently from when you first began writing the chapbook until when it came out. Because the publishing process, we know, it's quite long, from the inception of a chapbook to the writing and then the publication date. So I was wondering if you can talk a bit about how you view your identity now versus how you first started.
I kind of don't remember who I was before. Like it's kind of all a blur, but I feel like the more I write poetry, the more I publish it, the more I put it out in the world, the more I realize that poetry is just trying and it's about existence. And sometimes like it's sort of like realizing that you would do this work even if you weren't doing it publicly. If you weren't doing it like as a professional, like I would still be a poet, on writing on a napkin or whatever. And I think that it's fun to learn more about like craft and more about what makes the things that you want to write about shine a little bit more. Like I think that's fun. But yeah, I just it's like just kind of like really sitting with what it means to try. Yeah.
Hmm. I think about poetry too. It's a like what you just said. It's a lot about just sitting with the work, and also in turn sitting with yourself, and it's quite an experience. Yeah. Just a reminder, if anybody in the audience has a question, feel free to ask it at the end. There'll be an open period. But until then, we have our third reader here who is joining us virtually on screen there. This is Sherry Wang. Hi, Sherry. All right. Wang is a writer whose poetics emerges and expands through music, ephemera, and printed matter. Her first full-length publication, Love Speech, from Metatron Press in 2019, is an intersection between poetry and auto theory. She is interested in love, queer diachronic time, lyric fragments, epistolary address, and écriture féminine. She received her poetry MFA from the University of British Columbia and is an immigrant settler to Canada, alternately based out of Shanghai and the still Okanagan region known as Kelowna. You can find her at xiaohuanwang.com. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, David, and I want to say hi to Isabella and Jane and Leanne too. It's great to meet you guys. I didn't really get to say hi as I came into the room, so I just wanted to feel like we were all in the room together. Thank you for having me. So, as David mentioned, I'm going to read a little bit from Love Speech right here, which is my debut collection of poetry and auto theory from Metatron Press. So I think I'm going to start with that. And if it's okay with you, David, I'm going to read a little bit more of some unpublished material that I've been writing recently. I feel like because I've sort of always been allergic to writing about specific places and writing basically like naming the lyric I in a specific form, and speaking to those aspects of identity and showing myself in that way through my work. So that's something that I'm just, if it's okay, I'd like to workshop here in this safe space of this panel.
Yeah, for sure. We'd love to hear it.
Awesome. So this is from Love Speech. It begins with a quote by a theorist I really look up to, Sarah Ahmed. Sarah Ahmed writes, quote, "Loss of time for writing feels like a loss of your own time. Attention involves a political economy or an uneven distribution of time between those who arrive at the writing table, which affects what they can do once they arrive. For some, having time for writing, which means time to face the objects upon which writing happens, becomes an orientation that is not available given the ongoing labor of other attachments, which literally pull you away. So whether we can sustain our orientation towards the writing table depends on other orientations, which affects what we can face at any given moment in time." End quote. So that's a really long quote from Queer Phenomenology. I write after this, as a young woman, a migrated and migrating Chinese person and skilled laborer, trying to be successful in my multitude of being these things means giving up my time to line up with straight time, while turning myself after hours to face the symbolic and literal writing table, as well as the work and people I feel I belong with. My queerness is tasked with maintaining an orientation towards communities and ways of communicating. It is bound up with readings of queerness, which need to happen in between other events. The act of reading takes on a lively importance as it occurs beyond text, in stereo with lived desire, loneliness, aesthetics, and into moments of ecstasy, pleasure, rapture. And this is how I find myself arriving right here with you. Something originary in me has always tended towards intimacy, goading me toward all else and all else, which puts me closer to you. So Love Speech came out in 2019, and at that time, I was feeling a lot of anxiety around time and my relationship to my time, as I felt like it was being co-opted a lot by the work that I was doing. In 2019, I was working full-time as a barber in Shanghai. I'd moved back there in an attempt to repair my relationship with my mother, who I couldn't bring myself to walk away from that relationship, but I also knew that something had to change. So a lot has changed since then. So this is from unpublished work. This dusk would reduce him to an outline, but she would recognize him right away. Sasha was still only on Sam's phone, saying, "Oops, I'm at arrivals, but I can come back out." But soon he would be able to say things like, "Hey, taste this," because he would be near enough to place a slice of orange on the region of her tongue all those charts from middle school had falsely labeled sweet. Imagining sweetness made her close her eyes, and just as she did, she knew he was in front of her from the sensation of falling she got whenever he was near. He's never coming back, is what she's always thought. Every time, and every time she could not believe her luck when she would see him coming towards her in one of his stupid band t-shirts, grinning as if he had just gone to the car for a sweater. Sasha had to leave again. It was Lunar New Year, and the whole country got a generous holiday. Shortly after he left, the pandemic broke and made a dream out of everything. In more ways than one, it felt like Sam and Annie had met in their dreams. When she couldn't sleep, Annie called out to Sam in the night, "I can't keep staring up at the ceiling, waiting for the morning. I'm going home." Sam didn't leave her sleep, but reached out to answer her, "I will understand everything you ever say." Like this, they met again and again in some middle state between sleep and wake at the exact halfway point. The exact halfway point between Riga and Shanghai is Krapinski. Sam was watching Annie take a free online personality quiz, both of them diagonal on Sam's bed during Shanghai's plum rain season, both of them wondering what it would take for Annie to kiss Sam. My life has been permeated by a sense of longing. Yes, no, somewhat, select one. Outside temperature was 34, which felt like 44. 2 fans going that weren't doing anything. Annie clicked yes, which felt like making a move. She was thinking, your palm is the heaviest thing to have ever been flattened onto my back body where the heart is. Sam was thinking, no one but you. As time dissolved, all touch, leaving only implications. What counts is paying attention, said Sam. They were physically lying in bed, but spiritually standing in a doorway. Hi, one of them thought. Hi, the other one thought. I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Those were lovely. I wanted to ask you about your background in academia and how that influences your poetry. Basically, how does approaching queerness or that of your narrators, the queerness of your narrators, with an academic lens influence how you construct your poetry?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think my relationship to academia has been kind of fraught, actually, in like my personal life. I did my undergrad in English literature, and basically, like, I think there were a couple of teachers that I had in my undergrad that really showed me that there could be a possibility that academia might have a place for me. But those were really exceptions. The overwhelming feeling was that, especially in a very large undergraduate survey class, it wasn't really encouraged, the kind of voice that I wanted to pursue in writing. It comes back to this question of enoughness that I think at this point in my life and career, like, I don't think, like, wondering about, like, enoughness isn't an interesting question to me anymore. And so I think I've kind of let myself off the hook in the assortment of how did Leanne's husband put it?
Multi-dimensional imposter syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. I've kind of let myself off the hook in terms of like the assortment of imposter syndromes that I would otherwise be feeling. All to say that, like, I think academia, I love theory. And I think that's maybe what inspired your question, David, is there's this tapestry of other writers that I work very closely with and intimately with. I loved, like, even when I was out of school proper, which I was for several years, like I said, working as a hairstylist, working as a barber, I was on my lunch breaks, like reading Sarah Ahmed, reading like Helen Sisu, because that's what felt nourishing to me and made me feel less alone. And so there's this like kind of clawing relationship that I have to theory that kind of felt like barbed, in the sense that like I felt really entangled with it, but there was also a thorniness to it because I wasn't trained in as a reader, as a writer, to be put in conversation with it. And yet I did something which was, I just kind of, what Jane was saying of, I'm going to be a poet anyway if I'm going to write on a napkin. Like, I'm going to be in conversation. I feel like as a reader I was already in conversation with theory, and so it just felt organic to write that into my poems and to write that into the lyric self, because that felt true to me. Yeah, so there is a and I think that I really appreciate the people in academia who have like opened doors for me and given me chances to like kind of continue um, finding out if there is this place. And I'm 1,000%, I feel enlivened and well resourced enough to like say that I'm confident that I'm going to help make a space, hopefully in the future.
Thank you so much. That's really beautiful. And yeah,
Thank you for the
I
question.
love that this is kind of overarching theme through the read so far, that we don't feel enough and we don't belong totally in one sector of realm of existence versus another. But then there's also kind of this theme pushing through of like, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm still going to do what I want, like what Jane said earlier, but like I'm still going to be writing poetry. And I think this is kind of cool idea of forging your own identity still, even though you don't feel completely belonging to one part of yourself or the other, right? So thank you so much for your the words on that, Sherry. Our next reader and last reader is Isabella Wang. Isabella Wang is the author of the chapbook On Forgetting a Language from Baseline Press 2019 and her full-length debut Pebble Swing from Nightwood Editions in 2021. Among other recognitions, she has been shortlisted for ARC's Poem of the Year contest, the Malahat Review's Far Horizons contest, and Long Poem contest, and she was the youngest writer to be shortlisted twice for the New Quarterly's Edna Stabler essay contest. Her poetry and prose have appeared in over 30 literary journals and 3 anthologies. She's an editor at Room magazine. Please welcome Isabella.
Hi everyone. Um, sh- uh, Sherry, thank you so much for bringing Sarah Ahmed. Like, just my soul like goes to her. Love her so much, and that was a beautiful reading. And initially, I was gonna read a poem about water just to go with that theme, but then I remembered there is a poem in my book that kind of also speaks about like bodies and orientation, so kind of along Ahmed's route, but also it references one of Leanne's lines, so I thought I would read that one first. Ritual flowers. 1. Sections of being. The average person's torso holds a mean segment weight that is 12.65% abdomen, 5.335% arm, that is 3.075% upper arm, 1.72% forearm, 0.575% hand, 14.81% pelvis, 18.56% thorax, 8.23% head, that is 54.15% of the body together, 3.65% of someone else's hand on my upper arm, the squeeze for condolences, 2,166% of the body, that is 40 torsos of my extended relatives knotted together at the funeral. Ritual where, quote, memory is the only relationship we can have with the dead. I'm sorry, unquote. Leanne Dunic, to love the coming end. A percentage too small every time the tongue moves, delivers 100% of the heart, the trembling swell, the expanding vernacular of the thorax as it drowns in an expressed percentage of the body's repressed tears. The mean distribution of the heart, each chamber not assigned a percentage on the body statistical database. And this one I wrote from a partner. Serenade number 1 in Sunflowers for Scout. Children are born with a circadian rhythm of sunflowers. When they laugh, their eyes dot the distance between noon and night, turn to where the sun shines brightest. Their arms are like hovercrafts, outstretched toward the simplest things, a morsel of sunflower jelly and some butter. Light is a matter not taught for those blessed with the heads of 1,000 tiny flowers, and the inflorescence of tears to make the whole world pure, though some never learn to repress this. Blow into your hand the petals of the different hues, and you will see the sky in pink, rouge, terracotta gold, the sunset you and I have created from bloom. Tournesol is a French word meaning to turn with the sun, and une lumière perdue, a lost light. To find it again, kneel at a child's eye level and look, really look. Focus in closely on what they're trying to show you. Because one doesn't have to be made of glass to let light in. Those who came before us left with a graft of your stalk to plant for another season. Walked for miles on gravel only to be replaced by the weight of walking in sand that, having absorbed the intensity of stars, now make up the desert. The average sunflower takes 60 to 85 days to pollinate, 100 days to grow seeds. Only young flowers move. Only young flowers have to. The mature wait for bees to come to them. Do they ever berate themselves the way we do, upon leaving a measure of time that some call the West and some call serendipity, never being able to look back? The sun fits 960,000 Earths at its core. That's 1.969 times 10 to the power of 9 sunflowers per square mile on Earth. 1.89024 times 10 to the power of 14 seeds I would plant with you, for every bird and every person grieving. If I gave you a seed, would you promise to throw it away so that it has a chance to make the world better? Because some gifts are not meant for hanging on to. Because we'll have many more years to stain the grass fields yellow. Because the word because is a beautiful word you once used to explain to me why sunflowers are your favorite flower. When you smile, you make the whole world bloom with the faces of sunflowers for the people who hurt you and love you the same. That's all.
Oh, that was a gorgeous poem. Thank you for reading
you.
that one. I want to talk about kind of your journey from debuting with a very wildly popular, successful chapbook, Unforgetting Language in 2019, and now debuting to a full-length collection. How do you feel you approach identity differently from your chapbook in this book full-length collection?
Yeah, thank you. I think I guess one of the similarities between the two, I'll start with the similarities, is that both kind of track, I guess, this coming of age, kind of in terms of perspectives. And there's a lot of different threads you can trace throughout my book, like ecological queerness, influence, and I guess coming of age is one. And so chronologically, Unforgetting a Language consists of 10 poems that I wrote in my last year of high school and in the summer right after I graduated. And then this book includes some of those poems that was initially published in the chapbook, but then continues and kind of passes over university and a lot of new things that I was feeling and experiencing as I was learning more, like academically, theoretically, but also moving through kind of the literary community, moving through the pandemic. And so I think, the poems in my first book, they deal a lot with identity and family as I am just getting to know the literary community and just really finding my own voice. And so, and for me, I feel like there are more just whole in terms of the vision there and the form I use. They're pretty much just all standard stanzas, free verse like stanzas. And so after I published the chapbook, I think a lot of people experience this after they publish their first book. It's kind of like this feeling of being stuck, not knowing where else to turn, and I felt that a lot of that the holistic or unifying form that I wrote and was able to express myself in that first book no longer fit as I was moving through university and suddenly grasping with a lot of difficult ideas of processing issues in the world, also my place in the world, and just also facing real challenges during these past few years. And so I think in terms of identity and queerness, I found a lot of that through my new exploration through form, just looking for new creative forms, weird forms, experimental forms that feel more like a home, less in the traditional, like say, like a house, but more in a home that just fits me and my body and my orientation. And yeah, I think so. Like the second book is more of an exploration of that, a lot more fragmentation and breaking apart, but then also challenging myself to find a way to bring the reader back again.
Thank you so much. As I said earlier, this is kind of theme throughout all of our works. I think about just this struggling about the whole in-betweenness again. And it presents itself differently for everybody, of course, and the challenges are unique in navigating that. I want to pose a question to you, everybody, and what are the challenges that you kind of face or find yourself facing while you're exploring how you don't feel like we don't belong in one world or the other, and how that affects, our writing and yeah, the challenges that will kind of uniquely face us. Sherry, feel free to chime in. You're on screen.
Sure, thanks for. I wasn't sure if that's an invite in general, but
Go
since
for it.
I have unmuted myself, maybe I'll get my voice out of the way here. I was thinking about, what I said earlier about like the enoughness, and I think like questions of asking if one thing is enough of X or Y, it also like implies that there's kind of an excess, too muchness of something else. So like I think something like a feeling of lack and insufficiency in terms of identity or genre or worldings, I realize is taken up in this other side of kind of like an excess or a repression of an excess of something else, a secondary genre or a third genre, and I think that like something that personally I'm trying to like right now in my um, what I'm trying to do and like the way that I'm trying to personally challenge myself is to lean into that excess a little bit more. And so, like, stylizing, even as I'm trying out like more narrative voices or, stepping into exploring different, like, kind of unknown worlds that have a history and have like conventions that come along with it, like I'm still importing my own excessive aesthetic and allowing that to really be present and like be voiced, and stand behind that. So stylistically I'm still approaching everything as a poet would.
That was a really beautiful comment you said about the whole the idea of there being an excess of something. Does anybody else have anything else to add to that question or what Sherry said? Anything else?
I think that like the idea of belonging is very seductive, and it's also a myth. Like in a way, like I feel like belonging to yourself is the most that you can ask for, or belonging to a sense of internal peace in a way, which also includes like engaging with others and like facilitating that kind of um, peace with others. And I don't know, like I really liked what Sherry was saying about like how enoughness is hinged on like an excess, and like I was thinking about how like the disability justice organization Sins Invalid or Invalid has like the word invalid at the end, which like really questions what it means to be valid. Like just being disabled and being queer and being racialized, it's like I'm never going to belong and I don't actually care. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know, it feels very freeing to just embrace that through poetry and just in embodied ways. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of it, like the in-betweenness for me, it's just a celebration that, that possibility in many spaces exists, not all, but in many. And, like growing up, like, and first generation immigrant, this whole like trajectory into like say mastering English or like just becoming a writer or going to like an um English program, it's all rooted in this like in this initial story of wanting to fit in, of learning the language so you would fit in, so you would have friends, so you wouldn't be picked on. And only later, through having written and through this whole experience and finding a place in the community, has it given me like a chance to kind of find myself, um, and um, and just make your own rules and push any boundaries to so that you're comfortable expressing yourself and who you are. um and I mean, like, I feel pretty lucky, just in the creative community, being able to like play with form, do a lot of weird stuff, which I like, just because like a lot of writers like me, we have fragmented sense of history and ancestral memory and who we are. And so our writing isn't going to be linear. So having the space to then write and create new forms is really wonderful. And it's in the not knowing of what that creation is going to be that we kind of strive towards but never reach a sense of who we are. And again, it's kind of that between us. And then in the university, and I feel like I've been really lucky that people have often given me the space to also push the boundaries. But, I love interdisciplinary work. And then one of the very structural frameworks of academia as you go on is that, interdisciplinary isn't necessarily a good thing. They want you to specialize in something. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I want to do. But then, I totally agree with also, Jane, there is, there's space and container through which, you're yourself, you're swimming, you're writing, you're doing your thing. But then there's always that outline, there's that framework and that structure that, is confining you. And so, having gone through, disability in the past year, having been through welfare, having been through, the homeless crisis in Vancouver, and a lot of these different physical and structural difficulties that kind of then impede your spiritual, your creative energy. It's hard when you don't belong, when your body doesn't belong in a framework or in a form you had to fill out. And yeah, it's it takes a lot of energy, often creative energy, to work through that too.
Thank you so much. Leanne, anything to add, or it's okay if you don't? Yeah. I think we have time for probably one more question. It's just very open. What's kind of next for you to explore in your work, if anything?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm doing this PhD, so lots of stuff's going to get learned. But I have a book coming out in 2024 with Talon, and it's called Wet. It explores Asian female bisexual identity. It features a narrator who's a model who's gone to Singapore as a migrant worker, but is trapped indoors because there's such poor air quality due to the fires in Indonesia that they're trapped indoors. But while they're trapped indoors, they see all these migrant workers building condos in such poor conditions. So I did have an experience where I modeled in Singapore a long time ago. I was also later on in Singapore when this was happening. And so it is inspired by those events. But I want to dive really deep into exploring sexuality in a way that hasn't been done before, which is really challenging. And I've been writing this book for 7 years, and I'm going back to Singapore in November. So I'm hoping to have some breakthrough. But you can all look in spring 2024 and see if I was successful. I'm not sure if I will be.
I'm sure you will be. Very excited
That's
to read
my
that.
next thing.
Anybody else? Jane?
They haven't told me if I'm allowed to share. I'm like there is a book coming out in 2024, so yeah, we can do a thing together. That would be great. Yeah, that's like a sort of like an extension of this, but who knows? We'll see. But right now I'm also working on memoir, and so yesterday my best friend was like, I like your poems, but they're kind of reserved, and I'm like, ooh, okay, I guess that's the permission to write a memoir, to kind of tell the truth more, I guess, in my work. So maybe we'll see. Yeah.
I'm glad we got a sneak preview. 2024. Let's see your eyes. Sherry, anything to add of any hints of what's coming up next?
I mean, I'm currently in the process of, shopping the completed manuscript that I did for my master's thesis around, and looking for a home for that. In the meantime, I kind of have a couple of just playing around and having fun with different mediums I have a screen printing show that just kind of ended right behind me, is one of the screen prints I made. Just like placing text in different situations and bodying forth text in that way. I'm really excited I also have kind of a sound element to my practice. So I'm really excited to just like bring poetry into like the world again and perform. So hopefully more of that. I'm going to try and like manifest that.
Oh, great. I love how all of the new works in our work are just kind of in multiple genres, collecting everything. Isabella, anything or?
So, as I'm about to graduate from my undergrad, my professors are like asking me about next steps, and so I suggested that I found my own department of sleep and that they pour money towards my ambitions and project and vision. They said no. So now I'm working on two poetry manuscripts, but the one that's further along, it's a lyric of grief, and it tracks the grief and loss of a beloved poet very dear to my community, Phyllis Webb, kind of in synchrony with my own battle with cancer and the losses incurred in that, and also battling the healthcare system. And the more I write in the direction of the healthcare, I'm wondering how I'm going to marry these two pieces, but that's what I'm working on right now. And then another poetry manuscript and like the seeds of a novel, but like I have such bad imposter syndrome. Like I don't know how novelists do it. So like I wrote 300 words of a prologue and then I stopped and I can't go back to it now. Even though I quite like the prologue, but I don't know what to do next. Do I include like dialogue? Do I do like narrative? I don't know what to do. Tell me.
Take a nap.
Take a nap. See, if I had my department of sleep.
It's so nice to hear that we have like such exciting works coming from you guys. We're killing it. Does anybody in the audience have a question? I can relay to the authors up here. Yeah, Steffi?
I was just wondering, what are some of the nourishing works or texts or forms that you've encountered lately that really like inspired you in your current practice? And you could also answer.
Yeah, so Steffi asked what, for the live streaming viewers, that what are the nourishing works that kind of inform our practice? What inspires us, right? Yeah. Anybody wants to answer?
So this past year I've had like a lot of side effects from just when I got sick, and so one of them was I have trouble reading or watching TV or just processing. So one thing that has helped is audiobooks, and I've been listening to a lot of stories in the form of audiobooks on when I'm transiting and stuff. So, and oh my god, some of them are so good. Catherine Hernandez's Scarborough, like oh my god, just tore my heart open. Um, I loved I loved Jasmine Seeley's The Island of Forgetting, which is a new one. Um, it's another one I'm trying to. Oh, Cedar Bowers, Astra. Like, yeah, these were all like some really wonderful stories that just kind of nourished me as I was, feeling really stuck in my body otherwise.
The book I just finished last night was a book I just really enjoyed. It's called Run Towards the Danger, and it's by Sarah Polley, who you may know from her work in the movie industry. But I thought of it when you were talking, Isabella, because she writes a lot about her encounters with the healthcare system. Did you read it? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you'll like it. It's just she writes about it in a really inspiring way. So that's the freshest thing on my mind.
I was reading The Year of the Tiger by Alice Wang and just really enlivened by like her little craft talk in the beginning of the book. But otherwise, I feel like I've been spending a lot of time just trying to heal from life, and I think that is a really, it's not like inspiring. It's more like this is my time to just rest, and sometimes sometimes you take drugs, and that helps. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
I want the names and sources of those drugs.
I'll give you the website later.
Sherry, any last word?
Yeah, I guess this year I've just been super inspired by. I'll give a shout out to two people. One who doesn't need a shout out. It's Miranda July. I've just kind of been like consuming all of the media that she's been putting out, and I think just listening to her talk boldly about like crossing boundaries in a lot of mediums has been really inspiring. Not asking for permission to do any of that. And then on the other end of the spectrum is my friend Lynn, who is a photographer and brilliant poet who I intersected with towards the tail end of my time in Shanghai. He wrote a little chapbook that I bought at a fair that I take with me everywhere because it's like, small and perfect bound. And I just put it in my back pocket of whatever jeans that I'm wearing that day. And it's very well loved, but it's nice to kind of have like the minor literatures that you can bring with you everywhere you go, So those are the two people that come to mind for me.
Awesome. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our event. Thank you so much for joining us in person and those on the live stream. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Authors' books are for sale in the tech gallery by Iron Dog Books. The chapbooks, Jane will be up there selling her chapbook. Yep, feel free to sign and give chats. Leanne's and Isabella's books are up as well. Sherry's is available on Metatron Press on the websites. And thank you so much for joining us today, guys.